Hey everybody, we are doing the first study of Advent, and I have some scripture for you, and I'm going to try and keep it short so I can download it on the on YouTube because I don't want to go live because I have a hard time when sometimes I go live it doesn't seem like it pops up like I want it to. So this way I can control where it goes and by taping. So I'm going to tape, and I also may have to pause this because I'm the only one in the office today. So if the door goes off, I may have to run up there. So we're taping, but this is the Bible study, and the first topic of the Advent Bible study is peace or shalom, and we're looking at the Old Testament today. We'll look at the New Testament next week, and then we'll keep going with that for 2 more weeks after that. So it'll be 4 in total. And so I have 4 scriptures for you from the Old Testament, and I'll give you the address. I'll read one verse, but I'd like you to read, around it, maybe the whole chapter, and that's what I would do in a full study. But we're not doing a full study, so I'm giving you a verse, and you read the whole thing around it, the passage. Okay. I want to begin by leading us with this thought, and it's kind of a prayer, but I'm going to read it. When our lives are focused on God, awe and wonder lead us to worship Him, filling our inner being with a fullness we would never have thought possible. Awe prepares the way for us for the power of God to transform us, and this transformation of our inner attitudes can only take place when awe leads us to turn to wonder, admiration, reverence, surrender, and obedience toward God. This is the path to peace. And so today we begin with the prayer of, O Lord, grant us peace. Okay? I have 4 scriptures. So the first scripture will be out of Numbers chapter 6. Chapter 6. That may be the one I don't say read the whole thing. It's Numbers. So Numbers chapter 6, and I'm going to do 24-26. I think it sums it up, and it's the climax of the chapter of the priestly blessing, okay, or benediction. And so, may the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make His face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord lift up His countenance upon you and give you peace, or shalom. So, in this scripture, what we see is, may the Lord make His face to shine upon you. And what does that mean? And notice that in the very beginning there, may the Lord bless you and keep you. The blessing is that God has you protected. Think of sheep in the field. They still belong to the master, but if the master is not present or does not have his face upon the flock is at the mercy of the wilderness. Unless he has brought the flock in, like they often did at night, to a place of protection, to a place of peace, to a place of where God keeps us. And therefore, even though maybe His eyes are not upon us, He has provided this, I'm going to use the word fence of protection. Sometimes we think of fences keeping us out of stuff, but in this case, think about the fence keeping us, other stuff from us. So may the Lord bless you by keeping you. That's how that starts. May the Lord bless by keeping you. And then the Lord's face to shine upon you is actually, it's really a twist, because what it really means is the Lord has not hid His face from you. It is really, that's the blessing. The bummer would be if the Lord is not, if He's hiding Himself, if He's not revealing Himself to you, if He's not looking toward you, then He has hidden His face. And that is the opposite of a blessing. So therefore, If God's gaze, like I'm looking in the computer right now, if God's gaze is upon you, that's a blessing. That makes sense, right? And then he'll lift you up. You yourself feel better knowing that God's face is shining upon you. So how do you know God's face is shining upon you? Well, if you seek God by keeping his commandments, if you walk with the Lord, this pleases him. And therefore, when you are following his commandments, which remember Jesus boiled them down to not many, right? And I sometimes worry I'm oversimplifying things for you. It's not this simple, and yet it is this simple. If you love God with all your heart, soul, and mind, and you love your neighbor as yourself, you are walking in the commands that God has given you. Now, there's a lot of ways that works out. Those commands actually are rather large. But these two are a good path that you won't tend to step in it if you stay on those two commands. If you walk off of those two commands, there's a real likelihood you've walked outside of the commands of God. And that's why Jesus boiled it down so simply. He's not saying that's it, but he's saying really that's it, if that made any sense whatsoever. Remember, write down your questions, and they can include, Pastor, why did you say that? That made no sense. But I hope it makes sense if you think about it a while. I hope. So the way to know that God's eyes are upon you is to walk in his commandments. And when you walk in his commandments, he brings you peace. Peace by his protection from other things. Protection. Okay? And that's that priestly benediction. That doesn't mean, if we're walking in God's path, that our life is free from trouble. It doesn't mean that. But it means that God's blessing is upon us, and that God's face is upon us, and that God will note, God will see our afflictions, and God is a good God. He will respond. And, you know, as I'm often reminded, and it's difficult for me because sometimes God's very best response is to bring me home, bring us home. And so sometimes when we lose a loved one, or when we go through this great grieving period of loss, we wonder, why did God do that? And I have to have faith that God, in his wisdom, said, my very best response to that is to bring this hurting one home. That's what I think on that. So anyway, may the Lord bless and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. May the Lord lift up his countenance upon you, give you peace. There you go. So Isaiah, playing off of the priestly benediction, also builds towards a climax. And his climax is found in Isaiah chapter 9. And I'll read verse 6, but I really encourage you, in this case, read Isaiah chapter 9, at least those first 6 verses, and watch him build toward this, okay? So verse 6. And he is named Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, the Prince of Peace. Isaiah chapter 6. And so notice in this that Jesus, and this is Jesus, he's talking about the coming righteous king, whom we believe the coming righteous king is Jesus Christ. And he titles him, look at those titles, but the first one I think is really cool, and the last one I really focus on, you know, if you know me. And the first one is Wonderful Counselor. Notice it doesn't say Tremendous Warrior. Doesn't say that. It says Wonderful Counselor. And so when you think of a counselor, what makes a counselor wonderful? It's the one who provides you good advice. It's the one who can lead you out of a difficult situation without, beating up everyone so that you have the easy path of walk. You still have to walk it. But this counselor gives you that guidance so that you can walk it in a way that is beneficial to you and brings you that that peace. And it's because of his ability to be that wonderful counselor, then he is that last title, which is the Prince of Peace, or Shalom, the Prince of Peace, because he provides it by guiding you, not doing it for you, guiding you, giving you the wisdom to walk in a way of peace, that God's face may shine upon you. And then the choice there, once that's provided, I'm watching this TV show. And I probably shouldn't admit that I'm watching this TV show. I'm debating even if I want to tell you I'm watching this TV show. You're watching my brain process in real time. I found it on Netflix. It's called Lucifer. And you'd think, oh my gosh, he's watching a show about the devil. And it is kind of about the devil. But in the show Lucifer, the devil himself, believe it or not, has a counselor. And she provides him wonderful sage advice, which the funny part of the show, or the fun part of the show, is when he's in the room, he never gets it right. He takes the wrong direction almost every time. If she says the color is blue, he says, so you mean it's red? And then before she can correct him, he runs out the door and he gets in all kinds of trouble. And then through that whole journey of trouble, he finds out the answer is actually what she said all along. And so it's kind of the opposite of what I'm talking about in this case, because Jesus gives us the great answer. And again, it's up to us to discern that he's saying blue and not red, and then to follow that blue path, to follow that blue way. And then if it is red, to stop. Stop. Don't do it. It's red. And so that's the same example that's going on in this Isaiah, is this wonderful counselor, is the Prince of Peace when you follow his counsel. And it's just like above. If you're in his keep, if you're in his protection, his face, the Lord's face will shine upon you. He will lift you up. He will give you peace. You notice it's together. I would hope, since we're talking about peace. So I've given you Numbers 6 and Isaiah 9, and now I want to jump a little farther to Isaiah 45 and look at this. I form light and create darkness. I make peace, or shalom, and create woe. I, the Lord, do all these things. This is a difficult passage because we do see God makes light, but he also makes dark. God makes peace, but he also creates woe. God does it all. Since I used the devil story right above, what we can do now is the devil made me do it, just doesn't work. It just doesn't work. Okay, God is not a tempter, but God is not somebody who's not going to give you free will. You have free will to make choices. And in these choices, you can create, God can create this peaceful situation for you with the right choice. And he can also create woe if you just refuse to listen to the sage advice. And so we always, when we're making these movements, when we're making these statements, have to realize there is an opposite to peace. And it's woe, it's pain, it's suffering, it's sorrow. And we do it to ourselves. God does not necessarily do it, all right? But he has created an environment where, because of free will, remember, you like free will. You might go, what, wait, I'm not sure. Yeah, you, trust me, you like free will. You like being in control. You like feeling like you have the choices, right? Well, if we have that, and I believe we do, then we also have to understand when we make the choice to walk out of God's will, there could be consequences. Just as there are consequences when we walk in God's will, right? When God is able to keep us and protect us and shelter us. It's the same story like the prodigal son. If you're going to say, hey, I'm out of here, well, then you're going to deal with the consequences of out of here. Wait a minute. That's a New Testament story. I can't use that one. I can't use that story. So I have to use an Old Testament story. It's like Abraham and Lot, where Abraham followed God and stayed in the hill country, and Lot went, ooh, look down in the valley. That valley is so green and so lush and so beautiful. What could go wrong if I go to the valley? And he makes his address in Sodom and Gomorrah. Well, Sodom. And his wife turns into a pillar of salt. And, he gets attacked. And he walked a path. Free will. Free will. Notice, because of his choice, God did not necessarily curse him. But there are consequences. This is the woe. Woe. Okay? Write down stuff if you have questions about that, because with the concept of free will is also the concept of why then does God punish? Or why does God create woe? Why doesn't God just make every situation peaceful? Why doesn't God just overpower our bad decisions and say, just again, I'm going back to Lucifer. When the counselor, why didn't the counselor just stop Lucifer and say, Lucifer, you got it totally wrong. Listen again. Why? And so write that down. Journal that, if you will. If you're a journaler, start journaling about why. Why doesn't God stop us when we make these horrible decisions? Horrible. And why does God hide his face so that we don't know why we're being punished? Think of the book of Job, where all these calamities, all these terrible things happen to Job. These woes happen to Job. And I almost said Joel, which would have really confused everybody. Job. Why did they all happen? And if you read the book of Job, which I encourage you to do if you haven't ever done, it's a great literary book. It's awesome. Job never knows. It's not like somewhere in Job, God reveals himself to Job and says, hey, Job, the devil and I are having a little bit of a contest here, and you're a pawn. I'm sorry, you're a pawn. And so I have to kind of, do these bad things, because the devil thinks if I throw a couple bad things at you, you're going to turn on me. That's what he thinks, is if I throw a couple, you're just going to turn. He thinks you're just in it for the good, for the blessings, for the positives. And so I have to do this to prove the devil he's an idiot. That's what I'm doing. Never happens. Job is in the dark. He's sitting in the ash. He's got the blisters on his back. He's in misery. Even his wife is saying, just curse God and die. Just get it over with, man. I mean, obviously you did something really bad to deserve this. You really did, man. Which he didn't, and which we never find out. He never finds out. We know. We are given the window into what's going on in heaven that's affecting life on earth. And now we know it in Job. But do I know it for my own personal life? Not so much. I don't have that window into heaven where I can hear the conversations going on about, hey, that Pastor Scott, man, he's got too cushy a life. He's following you because it's cushy, man. If you turn on him a little bit, he'll turn on you. Just watch. We don't get that. But we do know that God creates the light. God creates the darkness. God creates peace. God creates woe. The Lord does all these things. Period. The final one is Ezekiel 37, verse 26. I mean, if you want to read all of Ezekiel, that's fine. It's a good read. Ezekiel's not as bad as Numbers. Notice I'm trying to bring peace into your life. I'm not making you read more Numbers. But Ezekiel's a pretty good book. So 37, you could read all of it, but I'm going to do verse 26 of Ezekiel 37. I will make a covenant of peace with them, and it shall be an everlasting covenant with them. And I will bless them, and I will multiply them. I will make a covenant of peace with them. That's how this starts. I will make a covenant of peace. And so I have a question. What does a covenant of peace look like? What does a covenant of peace look like? I, I really feel I want to end this study by not going too deep into that here, but to let you think on it, to ponder it. If God is, and this is scripture, this is God speaking, I will make a covenant of shalom, of peace with them. And what does that look like? What does that look like? And do you feel you have it? Do you feel you have it? Are you in the covenant with God? Remember, covenant is pretty doggone binding. So are you in that covenant with God? And it's an everlasting covenant. It's not like God's giving you that covenant of peace for 3 weeks. Okay, I'm going to give them a covenant of peace for 3 weeks, and then after that, No, it's everlasting. It's a lifelong covenant that you have entered into. And it is a covenant of peace. But do you feel like you have this covenant of peace? And if so, what does it look like? Or what do you think it should look like? Maybe you think you have it, but you still go, that ain't quite what I thought. When I think covenant of peace, I think of this. So I would be interested to hear what you all have to say about that covenant of peace. And again, write it down, email me, tell me Sunday, however you want to do it, because I just, this one is a good one. It's a tough one. Just me personally, I'm going to make a quick personal statement, and it's just me. I'm not placing this upon you. I feel like I internally have peace. But externally for my family, I don't feel that same sense of overall overarching peace. I feel I have peace. But some of the, for my kids and grandkids and the tension and the stress and I guess I feel bad for them maybe, and that's preventing me from finding peace. I don't know. We're not working a counseling session right here, so I'm not going to go too much deeper with that. But I hope you understand where I'm going with that, and that you can then play off of that when you begin to think about what does it mean, what does a covenant of peace look like, and how does it apply not only to you, but to your whole life, to the whole existence. Right now, I don't feel like we have that great sense of peace as a nation. If you were to look at the United States right now and say, is there peace in the United States? I think all of us would probably say not so much. Now, does that mean that God has withdrawn the covenant of peace? No. He says it's a everlasting covenant. But it also means that God makes the peace and God creates the woe. And if we as a nation continue to follow a woe path, free will. But Christ is the Prince of Peace. He will bless us. He will keep us. His face will shine upon us when we walk in His paths. Because just like a proud parent, when a kid's doing good, your face just beams. Back in junior high, there was a basketball game. This is my last story, and then I quit, I promise. There was a basketball game, and my son, Zach, he was having a game, man. He was lighting it up. So he had like 30 points. I don't know, easy. 30 points. He just was lighting it up. And there were parents were all sitting in the same section of the bleachers, so we didn't have them and us. We had everybody. And it was one of those gyms where everybody sat on one side. And one of the ladies for the other team, she was like, can anybody guard 13? Somebody guard 13. Somebody stop 13. Which, Zach's number was 13. And, proud parent. You can't stop him. You can only hope to contain him. And you can't even contain him this game. So it was great. So I was, proud parent. God, same way. Watching you just score and just continue to walk a life of peace and continue to follow his commands of love God with all your heart and love your neighbor as yourself, he's just beaming. He's just going, man, they get it. This is awesome. And can't you imagine God looking at you and just going, this is awesome. You're doing so great. You're doing so great. So that's what we're striving for. That's what we're striving for. All right, that's enough of that. Old Testament, shalom, peace. And I do want to give you a couple scripture that we're really going to focus on next week, and I'll make sure I have it all so you can read it early this time. So for next week, we're going to look at Luke chapter 2, Romans chapter 1, and Philippians chapter 4. Good thing that it was all on one hand, wasn't it? Man, that was great. If it had been like Philippians 43, it'd have been going. But, okay, let me say it again. Luke 2, Romans 1, Philippians 4. And we're going to talk about peace again. So until then, may God bless you real good, and have a great day.